Today we'll be covering off on how to navigate a quarter-life crisis, which I have shortened to QLC for convenience throughout the rest of the presentation. So we'll start off with an intro for myself, and then we'll dive into what a quarter-life crisis is, what causes it, some of the details that enable you to navigate through one in 4 stages, and then some caveats that I've learned along the way and from the research that I've done in this. And then an appendix that has some resources and a couple other interesting slides for identity development, which is definitely what a life crisis or a quarter life crisis is. So starting off, my background is in marketing and sales. I've had 10 years of experience working for companies including Microsoft and starting my own company and then going to work for several others in the startup space. I've done a lot in writing, and so I've actually written hundreds of essays and blog posts by now, a lot of them on marketing, but now shifting over into burnout navigation, quarter life crisis navigation, spirituality, philosophy, mindfulness, and psychology. Working on a book as well right now that covers off on my experiences in burnout and quarter life crisis, and is generally a sharing of experiences in the path of self-development and discovery. And I'm also a researcher. I've got a series of assessments out there and surveys that help people to understand their level of burnout or the causes of their quarter life crisis, and how to navigate through those. And I've been coaching folks for almost a year now in, again, quarter life crisis, burnout, and career development. Worked with about 45 folks, and so get a lot of good experience for helping people to navigate difficult periods in their life. I have burned out a couple of different times, once much worse than the other one. That was a few years ago at this point, but I'm still kind of navigating through all that. And as a consequence of burning out, I did go through a quarter life or third life crisis a few years ago. And so that's what prompted me to explore and start to try to understand the dynamics that were happening in my identity development, and what caused me to feel the need to work so much that it took down my mental and physical health. So a lot of learnings have come from research, out from what's out there, as well as my own experiences, and culminated in this presentation. So what is a quarter life crisis? Dr. Oliver Robinson is probably one of the leading experts in the modern life crisis, or the modern quarter life or third life crisis. He's actually developed a questionnaire that helps you to understand, are you in a quarter life crisis or not? He calls it a developmental crisis. And so he notes that this type of problematic period happens in adult life when things are noticeably more difficult. They're stressful, they feel unstable, more so than normal, and you struggle to cope with the means that have helped you to cope with stress, anxiety, and so on before. But critically, a crisis, he points out, is a turning point. That's one of the defining features of it, that something feels like it's trying to turn the corner, to shift. That realization is part of the crisis and actually transforms it from a truly negative thing into a positive opportunity. We'll get into some of what that means, but a quarter life crisis is really a calling from within to come into deeper alignment with the life that you truly want to live, beyond the influences that have shaped you growing up. So some key factors: quarter life crisis, it feels like that you're trapped, like something needs to change. It's a period where there's a lot of intense emotions, like you're feeling stressed, you're demotivated, you might feel depressed, you might feel apathetic or lost. You've got an intense sense of doubt. Intense negative emotions are coming up. You also may feel isolated, as if you're the only person that's going through this at this time, especially if you look around your peer network, and really just feeling cut off from a deeper purpose and life in general. As Dr. Robinson points out, it's marked by a period of instability. You feel like things are all over the place. And really, again and again, I felt this so often. I didn't feel normal. I felt like I'm not my normal self. Like, who am I anymore? I don't even recognize myself. I don't know who I am, who I should be, and who I'm going to be tomorrow. But definitely these intense feelings of, just doubt, existential doubt and dread of where am I going in life? These are factors that can point to being in a quarter life or third life crisis. Symptoms last for a long time. This isn't just I had a negative day today and tomorrow I'm feeling better, or this week, or even 1 month. Dr. Robertson points out that this period is really a period that lasts for over a year. And in it feels like it's going to last forever. But at least several months where you're having this continuous, what I felt was a low level depression, what's seemed to be called dysthemia, where it's just things just aren't feeling good. They're not feeling right for a while. And as mentioned, you're struggling to cope with unknown strategies. That might mean maybe work used to make you feel good and like there's purpose to it. Maybe going out and going for a few drinks with friends, maybe traveling, maybe hobbies or things. When what has made you feel happy or relief or satisfied in the past no longer works, that's a factor that points to a quarter life crisis. And overall, an intense questioning of yourself, your life situation, the meaning of life. These things can arise, and especially do arise when you're feeling lost and not sure where to go next. So, as noted, the good thing about a quarter life crisis or going through something like this is that eventually you get to this point of feeling like something needs to change, like it's a turning point, like you're being called to kind of the hero's journey of your life. And so what ends up happening is, for my research and reflections, a quarter life crisis kind of happens when we don't take ownership over our values and our belief systems, our worldview. As adults, when we leave school, when we leave our parents' places, when we start to make decisions and have agency over our lives, where we live, what kind of jobs we take, what hobbies we do, what we do with our spare time, who we date and spend time with, what friends we have. When we take control over our lives, but not our values and belief systems, this can set us up for a life crisis to happen. And in the quarter life crisis, we're awoken to this sense of existential, who am I? Am I doing things that I actually like? Why am I making these decisions? A misalignment happens many times when we just continue acting out the lives that our parents asked or expected of us, or society expected or pushed us into. This can happen, for instance, let's say somebody takes a job in finance because they feel like I need to make a lot of money because, what else is there to do in life? That's where the status and recognition is. My parents wanted me to earn a lot and to be successful. And if you're doing that from a sense of, I feel like I need to do this, I should do this, I must do this, rather than I actually enjoy this. I enjoy talking to people and working out deals, helping companies to grow and become acquired and get funding. If you are doing it from a sense of an external push or stimulus, again, that's what sets this up. Eventually, you within is going to say, I'm not happy. I'm doing things that I don't truly agree with, or I don't know why I'm doing them. So long as life proceeds in an orderly fashion and we feel like we're growing, like we're being stimulated, like we're distracted enough to look inside, distracted enough from looking inside and noticing this feeling around the edges of like, yeah, going out was, it's fun, but it's losing its edge a little bit. I'm not feeling quite so good about, again, the things that used to make me feel good. So long as life is moving along and we're feeling like we're making progress, a quarter life or third life crisis is held at bay. One note, that asterisk there points to, if So one of the main issues of quarter life crisis is a misalignment with the life that we truly want to live and the life that we feel we should live, or that we have to live. But if we grow up with values, worldviews, beliefs that are actually aligned with those that we ultimately want to live by, then we may not have a life crisis. We may feel like the decisions that we've made along the way are those that we stand behind, even as we grow and mature and look around and think, am I happy with where I am in life? In addition, if we are sort of inoculated by smaller doses of questioning, reflection, doubt along the way that don't build up over time, and we start to make small changes along the way and to come into deeper alignment with our values and belief systems that we're developing as we're growing, then we may not have a life crisis. But when life does not proceed in an orderly fashion, then the riot of the inner soul erupts to the surface, and that is the life crisis. It feels like anxiety, like disillusionment, like doubt, fear, depression, uncertainty. I'll go through a few of the triggers in the next couple of slides here, but just pointing out again, this may initially feel like this is an awful thing, like everything is going wrong. I don't feel like myself anymore, but really it's an opportunity. It's a turning point for you to come into alignment in your life and what decisions you make with the values and worldviews and ways of living that you actually aspire to, not because somebody and forces outside of you growing up instilled them in you. So that the inner soul really wants to have alignment. And this also expands into, on the psychology side of things, the parts of ourselves that we reject on behalf of society, our parents, the influences growing up. I feel like I can't just have fun because life is not just about having fun. And so if you have that mentality and your parents are always like, work hard, work hard, work hard, life is not about just relaxing, then you're rejecting a part of yourself and you're saying, I can't have fun. I can't just find ways to enjoy. I can't just spend a Saturday afternoon painting or sketching because that's not productive. So that part of yourself would be part of this riot coming up and saying, I'm sick of just working all the time. I want to just have some fun. I want to be creative. I want to live life a bit differently. So when we hit limits, we have an opportunity to come into deeper alignment. And again, this is just pointing out the quarter life crisis is a sign of maturity because we're trying to become a cliche kind of better version of ourselves, or more accurately, a more whole version of ourselves, not rejecting parts of ourselves because they don't fit in with societal expectations. So what causes a quarter life crisis? External triggers. The death of a loved one. That is one of the biggest ones. As we're going and taking agency over our lives and making decisions, in the early 20s, usually there's not going to be too many limits that we're bumping up against for many people. But then as we get into our mid-20s or late 20s, 30s, people start to pass away in our families that we're close to. And this gives us a major jolt, a sense of, wow, life is not, life is not guaranteed at any moment. It could be taken away. Things can really significantly change quickly. And that gives you this existential whiff of like mortality. And so that hastens the desire from within to live a life that you would be proud of, that you could look back, even if you knew that you're going to pass away tomorrow, and feel like, I'm proud, I'm happy, I'm satisfied with the life that I lived. If you go through, a health issue, physical, mental, burnout, otherwise, that can be something that also causes you to have this sense of doubt and confusion. If you have the end of a relationship that meant a lot to you, if you move locations and you're feeling isolated, if you have a sudden significant shift in your life, something where your life is no longer moving in a nice, orderly fashion, all these external triggers can cause us to fall into a period of questioning. On the internal side, ultimately things can build up and reach a breaking point, an inflection point. For instance, if you have the sense of you're falling behind, you're stagnating, you're not achieving enough, as your for many people, early career is filled with growth. You're learning new things, you're getting promotions very quickly, you're moving, you're getting a lot of validation, you're getting a lot of feedback. But as we move into mid-career, things for many people slow down. The promotions don't come as fast. The stuff that we're learning, the learning curve flattens out a little bit, and we have a sense of, well, where am I going? It used to be so exciting before, and now I'm just, the administrative stuff, operation stuff. For some people, that's very enjoyable, but for many people, it comes with a sense of stagnation. A big one, definitely negative comparisons versus network. So all of us, we open LinkedIn and we look around and we say, wow, that guy that I went to high school with who, didn't really seem to have his shit together, now he's a VP. And this other person, this girl that I just met that one time and I felt pretty superior to, now she's an SVP. People are moving. I'm falling behind. It's very easy today's society to have negative self-comparisons, and then to have us turn in on ourselves and feel like, well, what am I doing with my life? As mentioned, when values, things that are important to us, that were instilled in us growing up, when this diverges with our developing aspirations, this can cause a trigger as well. A lot of people, especially in the US, and we'll cover this in the shifting sources of meaning, a lot of people soak in a value of achievement, impact, growth, attainment, status, and that's instilled in us as we're growing up. But then as people grow older and mature and go through the process of finding out what's meaningful to them in life, family becomes more important. Love, kindness, acceptance become more important. Freedom, creativity, values definitely do shift as we go out into the world. We meet limits, we get exposed to different things, and we can truly choose what's important to us in life. So that is another internal trigger or shift that can happen. And then I'll cover this for what I call like the minority influence or effect. If we have stunted self-development in adolescence, and this is not only for minorities, if anyone doesn't really have a chance to live and get out there and see who they are, who they want to be, if they're kept metaphorically on a short leash by their parents or caregivers or at school, and they don't have a chance to get out and try different things, rebel a little bit, just get out there and shape themselves, then this can go underground, this feeling of I wasn't able to really explore myself, and this can pop back up over time. So sources of meaning. Over time, the places that people have historically gotten meaning have really shifted, especially in modern society. So if you look at places where that used to be very meaningful or used to be bigger parts of people's lives before, these are centered around relationships, being part of a bigger whole. So raising children is something that has been either delayed or is not happening for some folks. You look at China, their population growth has leveled off, in the news. Japan has had this for a while. As societies become more developed, typically having kids decreases. And it's not to say this is right or wrong, or that you can't be, kind of less happy with kids, but that is one shift in where people are getting meaning from, and also when it happens in life. If you're having kids at 21, 25, then that's also a big investment that keeps you busy and dedicated to that for years afterwards. It may lead to a midlife crisis after the kids leave the nest, and then you have these questions of who am I? Beyond being a parent, what's the life that I haven't lived? The existential questioning was just delayed. But now as we have more time in our 20s, in our 30s, to where we're not raising kids, we have more time to question and wonder, like, what is this all for? Long monogamous relationships. So that's also something that's in flux. People are having shorter relationships, dating more, with the rise of the dating apps. Marriages are not happening as much. Divorces are going up. And these used to be sources of meaning or belonging or identity that were much more prevalent and widespread in society. And granted, there were a lot of people that were unhappy in marriages and that were locked into relationships. So again, it's not that this is a good or a bad thing, but it's a shift away from relationships and into status and money. Last item in the diminishing meaning sources, religious beliefs. That is still and used to be very much something that people felt solace in, that they felt like, I know who I am. I'm a believer. I know what's important in life. It's following the tenets and the principles of the religion that I follow. While we have spirituality like mindfulness, Buddhism, just general feelings of spiritual connectedness with the world rising, that is helping to counter that a little bit. But being part of a bigger whole, being connected, is less so in modern society, when we are now more focusing on our individual pursuits. So work and career has kind of replaced, especially for the earlier years of adult life, raising kids or relationships. A lot of people are investing into that. Comparison culture, so our social followings, our digital presence, our brand, how people perceive us has really become an increasing source of meaning. Who we are. For instance, I felt that my identity for 6 years was being an entrepreneur, a CEO. That was a huge sense of my sense of meaning. But that's not a relationship thing. And humans are very social creatures. When we are more isolated, it causes us to have worse mental health. And so if we're, in addition, you put in work from home and just connecting with others digitally, it gives us less opportunity to be in connection and interaction with people in person and with deeper relationships. Yes, we may have a lot of friends, maybe more friends than ever, but we also move cities often. And so we don't get to put down roots as much. We don't maybe meet our neighbors as much. And so again, the shift is away from relationships and into generally just status. And then lastly, we have this expansion of self-responsibility, and in the sense of that the internet age, more knowledge than ever before in human history is at our fingertips. All we have to do is type it into Google and we will know it. Our options, you can start a business with no cost and scale it out to millions or billions of people in aggregate. With all these options for knowledge, with all these options for connection, again, dating apps is the majority way that most people make their connections. All this great power comes with great responsibility and feeling like we need to use that power. And so it's harder to feel satisfied with what you have when everything is out there at your fingertips. You feel like it's got to be perfect because I have more opportunity than ever before. So the minority effect, coming back to this, and self-development as we're growing up and even later in life. So for minorities, for females, for instance, or female gender, there are a lot of expectations that females should be nurturing, agreeable, submissive, go along. This is the word patriarchy surely comes to mind here. I won't go into that side of things, but what's being pointed out here is that if you have all these expectations that are kind of boxing you in, pushing you in a direction, you aren't able to really explore, who am I? Who do I want to be? And it's a similar way with LGBTQ. where there's rejection, there's denial, there's discrimination, there's non-acceptance of who you are. And that is something that's thankfully diminishing a bit, but it's still definitely there. If you have this pressure growing up, then it doesn't, again, allow you to really explore yourself. And so you push those parts of yourself down, you repress them, you reject them. And sooner or later, those things don't disappear. They come back up at a point. And that can, a lot of the people that I work with in quarter life crisis coaching are minorities. And it's just a reality of things. Ethnic and racial groups, it's a lot of discrimination, hate. There's a struggle just to survive. If you're so busy trying to survive, trying to downplay your uniqueness and who you are, then that's absolutely going to be fomenting a lot of material, a lot of momentum for a crisis to come in, a crisis of identity later on. So navigating a quarter life crisis, there are 4 stages, and I've got a lot of questions and prompts for you over the coming slides. But one thing that's absolutely necessary to note here is that the quarter life or life crisis comes about because there's a misalignment with the way that you're living your life, which is often, most times, influenced by the expectations of others, by, again, parents, society, or formative influence, or formative shaping experiences growing up. The crux of it is that you've got to identify and believe your own answers. Nobody else can tell you how to navigate it, because if so, then that would set up another crisis later on, because then you'd be feeling false again. Well, I did this because this person said that I should do this. So the crux is really, it's important to do your own self-discovery work, to go inward and converse and identify with what do you want, what's important to you, what's not important to you. How do you balance and navigate the needs to earn enough money to take care of yourself and your family? How do you balance that with the need to yourself, to serve yourself, to enable your creativity to flourish, to discover what you like in life? This can at first, especially for someone who's lost and just trying to find answers, it can be a bit of a buzzkill, but don't worry, the coming slides will give you prompts that you can journal on, that you can do walking meditations with, that you can just reflect on, that will help you to come to your own answers. But the important part is that is a must. You've got to go inward and explore yourself. So the 4 stages are: 1, a feeling that you're trapped. After you can move a little bit through that and accept that something needs to change, something is trapping you, that doesn't feel like it's really aligned with who you want to be and how you want to live, then as you start to realize that change is possible, you shift into stage number 2. And that's an inflection point. When you're feeling trapped only and you don't feel like anything can change, like you have no agency, then you will remain, for a while until you can get to that point. Number 2, once you realize that change is possible, then you start to get into the process of experimenting, of rebuilding, of trying things out. And then ultimately you solidify, you integrate those changes into your life in order to really not slide backward into, doing the should, following life by the shoulds, the must, the have tos, the expectations of others, but solidifying your own ability to live your life on your own terms, or at least in balance between what you need to do and what you want to do. So in stage 1, feeling trapped, how to navigate through this? Reflect on the past, on the present, and the future. The past, explore. What were the values? What were the beliefs? What were the worldviews that your parents instilled in you growing up? That teachers, that mentors, that role models, that authorities, that friends influenced into you growing up? Why did you choose the career you chose? Why do you live in the place that you live in? Why do you date the people that you date? What attracts you to them? What memories do you have from childhood, adolescence that really stick out in memory to you. Those are the places that you can look to try to understand what are the shaping influences that are still playing out in your life and pushing you to make decisions that aren't necessarily yours. They're you acting out this expectation of others, or trying to meet the needs or be accepted or feel like you belong. So how those shaped your decisions? And then who have you had to be to survive until now? What decisions do you feel like you've had to make to be accepted, to be okay? Which of those do you feel don't really align with where you want to go, with what you wanted to do at the time? This doesn't have to, and this shouldn't be a place of judging yourself, of just beating yourself up. That is an easy place for us to go, especially in the US. But this should be just a pure, as objective as possible reflection, where you're just trying to come up with some understanding of the dynamics that are happening in you and shaping you. Reflect on the present. So again, one of the defining characteristics is that you feel there's doubt as to yourself, your direction in life, what you like, what you don't like. You feel trapped by something. Maybe it's a job, a place of living, a relationship. Could be a relationship to yourself that you feel trapped in. Where does that self-doubt, where does that trapped feeling come from? What about it makes you feel trapped? Generally, where in your life do you feel like your energy is the highest? Where are you filled up? What parts of life, of your day, of your week, of your month, do you just feel so drained, like you dread doing those things? And generally, who do you want to be? That can be an intimidating and kind of scary question. Just who do I want to be, especially if you're in a place of feeling lost. So start to work with some of the other questions. And as you get into the process of reflection, more answers around who you might want to be, what might be interesting, will start to surface for you. So there's a few as well. And then on the future, what kind of a life, what kind of values, beliefs do you aspire to live by moving forward? If you were free from commitments, whatever it is that you're feeling trapped by, what if it disappeared? What if you were to be able to start over tomorrow? Even more so imaginative, what if you could do whatever you wanted to do for the next year? And if you didn't like the outcome, press reset. Come right back to this moment. Wouldn't lose anything. If you could live life freely with one reset button press for the next year, what would you do? And who can you be moving forward? One of the things that's really tricky about life crises is that we can sometimes feel like it's too late. I'm too far gone. I have too much invested in this. And the reality of the truth is that is not the case. It's never too late to start living differently, to make changes. It is never too late. That's an easy thing for us to keep in mind, to hold us stuck. And I'll get to more of the limiting beliefs that will prevent us from making progress through the stages of a quarter life crisis into a place where we're really much happier and more at peace with who we are and what we're doing. But it's never too late to start being who you want to be tomorrow, tonight. So here are some of those limiting beliefs. These are things that are going to prevent you from getting to stage 2. And you've got to do this reflection work and kind of find this inner strength as you're on your hero's journey, and see it as a hero's journey in order to move through these. The hero's journey is, this genius story writing that so many stories, movies, books, all those follow. It's the heroes going through their life, and they encounter some serious difficulties along the way. They feel like they're just beat up and they can't go anymore. They fall and everything seems like it's full of despair, hopeless. And just at that moment, many times there's a character who has a lot of wisdom and comes along and instills in them some wisdom that change is possible, that they can keep going, that if they just press through and persevere, that they can really make it. And at that point, the hero goes on this self-growth, self-empowerment realization, and then becomes the hero. This is your hero's moment. A quarter life crisis, third life crisis, a midlife crisis, these are all moments of their inflection points, opportunities for you to start living. It's never too late. And this is a great thing, therefore. It means that you're awake. It means that you have a chance from this point forward to start to make shifts in your life. So if you can see that this is your hero's journey and this is your hero's journey moment, and that change is possible, it will really open up your freedom and your power. But you've got to overcome, it's better to keep things are because I don't know what else. I'm afraid of the unknown. I don't want uncertainty. I have no choice, but I've got to stay in the situation. I've tried everything. Nothing was going to help. Absolutely, right there is an example of one of these limiting narratives that's just, I don't want to make light of anything, but kind of asinine or just impossible. There's no point at which a person has tried everything. It's easy to think in absolutes, especially when feelings are very intense and you're feeling lost and you're tired or you're depressed or anxious. And that, there are certain, you may need to work with a therapist or a psychiatrist to kind of get through some very core first up issues in order to be able to get to a point where you see the change is possible. And so that may be part of your journey as well. But once you're able to see a little bit of the light, you'll realize that there is something more I can try here. Something more I haven't tried. Something more that I've been thinking about it for a little bit, but I never really truly thought about it until now when I'm being very intentional about what can help here. I don't know how to change it. I don't know what to change. I'm not capable of change. Again, all these things are blockers that will prevent us from moving into change as possible and will keep us in the stage of feeling trapped. But once you start to move into a sense of, okay, change is possible. It is possible for me to shift my job. It is possible for me to maybe consider starting a different relationship, ending this one, or at least having a conversation to be honest about how I feel. It is possible for me to move locations. Once you start to entertain that idea, then explore what in your life is no longer serving your growth and well-being. What needs to change? How does who you want to be differ from who you have been? What do you really want? You could also do the opposite. What do you not want? The more years of life we have, the more understanding of what we don't want, just as much as what we do want. And the opposite can be a place to start. What might you start doing, stop doing, change, or continue? Diving deeper into that last item here, what might change look like? What might be something that you start that brings you more fulfillment, or that you have even an inkling that maybe this could be interesting? It could be something as benign as getting some computer paper, getting a pencil and just sketching. Even if you're not good at sketching, it doesn't have to be like huge life-changing thing, but if you build momentum, that's something that really helps you in this process. So just what might be something, even if it's small, that might bring you some more fulfillment? What's something that drains your energy, that you might stop doing? How might you change the way that something fits into your life to raise the overall level of fulfillment? And what might you continue doing? This is something that's pretty important. Like, not everything needs to change. And that's one of the big caveats. There should be many things in your life that you do enjoy, that you do want to appreciate, that you do want to continue. And if you can identify those, then you can appreciate a sense of continuity as other things are starting to change. And getting into stage 3, rebuilding. So once you have some of those ideas built out, flesh out the most appealing ones. Think about what you might want to, like what the specifics are. What's step number 1, step number 2, step number 3. And then start experimenting, start exploring, try new things, say yes to new opportunities, explore, gain more exposure to different areas of life, expand your horizons. This can definitely involve traveling. That's one of the key things. Many people that go through a life crisis moment, they travel. They go out and experience how other people live life. You might change your job. You might change your place of living. These are generally things that you want to do, are getting more exposure, especially if you feel like, I don't know what I could do. I'm not sure what's on the other end of this. Just, go take classes, go take classes in person, online, go to meetups, learn an instrument. I've got a list in the resources here of like 50 things for self-discovery that you can do. And it's not necessarily only about finding something that will become a permanent part of your life, or even a midterm part of life. It's again about building momentum. As you start to try things, it will expand your mind a bit and your horizons so that you can see other options that you couldn't previously see. It's about building momentum and seeing the changes possible, that you can try things and that you do have agency over how you live your life. And then in the end, solidify. Go back to reflecting. How did your experiments go? What did you learn? What feels better? What still doesn't feel quite aligned? Who are you now? Again, this consistency point. Where and how is who you are now on the other end of changes consistent with who you were before? We don't have to throw out all the values and beliefs that we grew up with. It can be a very validating, great thing to realize that, well, for me, for instance, both my parents really had a stiff work ethic, very, very dedicated. And while I internalized that a bit too much and went overboard and ultimately burned out, I still very much appreciate having a good work ethic. So I value being able to be persistent and dedicated in my work, but I now temper that, or at least I try to temper that, with seeing that life is not just about work, that it's important not to take that too seriously to the point that it interferes with my ability to spend time with people, to meet new people, to just be creative, and do art or different things. And what other changes may be needed. And then integrate. Integration is an important ritual that reflection and journaling and writing things down can help with. Also, conversations can help. So one of the big things you can do, and that I did a lot of, was an integrative therapy session, going deep to understand the influences that were acting on my life kind of unconsciously, understanding why those were there, how they were panning out, and then who I want to be, what my aspirational values and worldview are. And then talk through, the process of look back over those learnings, and then identify that at the end of all this, you are a more whole person. You have more wisdom. You have more consciousness about your own personal dynamics. Integration is really important for us to really keep those learnings and remember them. Another way to integrate could be to write a life purpose statement. Maybe you create an accountability commitment to someone. You vocally say to a friend or someone else or family member, hey, I've gone through this exploration journey and I'm going to commit to reading a new book a month. I'm going to commit to a book a quarter. I'm going to commit to, XYZ. If you write it yourself and you tell yourself your commitment, that's one thing, but it's easy for that to kind of fade away. Once you open that once you open to talking to someone else about it and they know about it, then that automatically elevates the importance of that commitment for you, because there's social accountability there. So going on a trip, may be a way to honor the experience that you've gone through. And then learning, a lot of sharing, teaching, writing, art. A lot of people that go through significant life experiences end up doing one of these things: coaching, teaching, writing, creating art, just communicating to the world what they've learned. So that's what ended up happening with me, going from marketing and sales to coaching and writing here. So caveats. Again, not everything needs to change and not everything should change. It's really up to you and your context and what's important to you and the way you want to live your life, to decide what to change and when to change and how to change it. But here's a starting place to consider. If some aspect in your life is actively harmful, it's manipulative, it's toxic, you're being abused in this, you're being gaslit, then that's a very good reason to change, to either get rid of that, to defend yourself more, or something else. Or if whatever that thing is not aligned with your aspiration or true values or belief system, and it cannot be brought closer in alignment, and it is not vital for another more important, meaningful life element, then maybe it's time to change. So that second point, third point, those are pretty important, as it can be easy to cast judgment and say on something and say, no, this relationship isn't serving me, I'm done with it. And many relationships ultimately may not be ones that you want to continue keeping. But it really is important to communicate and try to work through things before just chopping things off, because then you can get into an easy point where the solution is just get rid of it, rather than working through things, which helps you to develop your character, your resilience, and keep things that ultimately are important to you. And for instance, that last one, quintessential example is a job. Maybe there's a job that you're doing that you don't love, but you don't hate, and it pays the bills for yourself and your travels, or for your family, or for other things that are important. It's okay for a job to be a job. Maybe you do want to do the work of exploring, are there any options out there, any alternatives, to see, could there be a better alignment with what makes you happy and also pays your bills? Some things it's important to just accept as they are for now. That can always change in the future. And on that note, changes don't have to be permanent. This is another one of those mental narratives that really keep us stuck from making a change in the first place, or stuck in a change. You can always change. It's never too late to change, which means it's possible also to make a change after you've made a change. It can be difficult if you're always making changes, but part of the process should be to make a change, gather some data, reflect. How did this go? How do I feel about it? Did what I was hoping for come to fruition? Is there something else missing here? And then decide whether you want to keep it, change it, make it replace it with something else, or something else. So just allow yourself permission to not be locked into something, and to not feel like, well, this next job that I have has to be the thing that I'm going to enjoy for the rest of my life. It doesn't have to. It can be a step forward and not, fill you with such anxiety that you don't make that step and stay in wherever you are. That's even worse for you. And then watch out for some of these other things that can affect you along the process. Internal insecurities, projecting onto external life elements because they're unresolved. So this is where therapy can really help with this and reflecting. But for instance, maybe this sense of, I'm never good enough. I have to prove my worth, my existence in the world. And if I can't do that, then I'm nothing. That can be projected onto a job. And so that might mean that while you make a change in a job, you say, well, I've got to make more money at the next job. I've got to get a 10%, 20%, 50% bump. Or at the very least, I can't make anything less. All things equal, if you can find a job you enjoy more, that pays you more, pays you the same, great, fantastic. And you should negotiate in jobs. But if you have the sense of your salary, your income is your worth in life, and you haven't kind of detangled that to understand that your worth is not just your job and your salary, then it might project onto your job, and you might go into another job that offers you more money that makes you feel even worse, or not take that job that would allow you to work less, that would still pay you enough for your lifestyle, and allow you to be much happier. In that case, it wouldn't be the taking the job that is the problematic thing there. It's going deeper into yourself to untangle that insecurity that's projecting out of the job. That insecurity could also project onto other life elements, not just the job. And in fact, it probably is, especially if it's a deep rooted one that goes very core to your sense of self and being. Too much change at once can also be a detrimental thing, overwhelm you. Deafness to the real risk of harmful life elements. Going back to this idea of toxic environments, abuse, you may kind of blind yourself to, well, it's not that bad. I should be able to handle this, or any one of many other rationalizations. And if you're deaf to that, then that can prevent you from making the change that you need to make, or returning to sleep. That's borrowed from James Hollis. He's a Jungian psychologist. He wrote this book, The Midlife Passage. The Midlife Passage. It's about midlife crisis, and he has this great visual where he likens the midlife crisis to somebody awakening on a ship, pitching in the sea in a storm at night. And he says you have three options. Either you can grab the wheel and sail, or you can jump overboard, end it all, or you can go back to sleep. And if you go back to sleep, it's not like where you are on that ship pitching around in the sea, a stormy sea, isn't happening. It's still happening. You're just going back to sleep and avoiding it. In real life terms, this is going back to just, well, it's not that bad. I can handle it, or I've got no choice. All those blockers that are going to prevent you from seeing the changes possible and needed, or just distracting yourself or numbing out. There are plenty of things for us to use for that: social media, partying, drugs, traveling, stuff, buying things, work, many different ways for us to distract ourselves or return to sleep, rather than grab the ship's wheel and sail in a direction that we actually want to. So that is the meat and potatoes of all this. Again, I'll send this deck out for people to have with these links here. But here's a survey to help understand what is influencing your quarter life crisis, an infographic with those 4 different steps, defining your personal values, 16 different values with questions to help you understand which one is most important to you, different essays that I've written on quarter life crisis, 5 great books that helped me, might be interesting for you, and then a link to coaching that I offer if that's interesting for you. Then I've got a few just lessons learned from my experiences. Some of these are, been said many times over through the course of history. For instance, William Shakespeare, in Hamlet, he wrote, "There is no good or bad, but thinking makes it so." So that's not my own, but these are things that really came up for me as I was navigating through my own, and continue to navigate through some of these lessons, which is okay as well. And lastly, James Hollis, The Middle Passage, really good book for understanding the dynamics that cause us to make decisions based on insecurities from growing up. So childhood, the first adulthood, which is kind of like adolescence into adulthood, especially that first adulthood, we're starting to make decisions and see who we are in life based on our societal defined meaning and roles. So we're grounded in our ego to the world. If I do these things, then I'll feel okay. And transitioning through a life crisis takes you into the second adulthood. And that's where you have more of a self or an internal orientation in your sense of self-identity. And that's where you're no longer assuming that if I do these things that I've learned growing up, people find really important, that I'll be okay. That's where you're like, okay, I'm not assuming that if I make another $20,000 that I'll be okay in life and happy. It's going to be great. It's going to be useful, helps me to, do other things. But what I do with that, how I live my life while I'm making that other $20,000, or what I do in place of that, that's the more important part of life. And ultimately, the mortality fourth phase is where we come to live with the reality of death. All of us will die at some point. And that's where, going back to that idea of religion and spirituality, diminishing sources of meaning, as we come to a sense of we are part of a bigger whole, that can alleviate some of the fear of death. It's easy in religion. It points to there is an afterlife. There is something more after all this. So doesn't mean you have to pick up religion or spirituality, but an interesting concept. The Middle Passage, I definitely recommend. That's one of the books to read. So that is it.